we put this up on the board today because the legal world operates um, its whole system on fiction. So we have to be aware of that so that we can comprehend what's going on around us. Uh, this ridiculous free man on the land movement, even I've had enough of it, hearing the nonsense that comes out of the mouth of people that support those movements. They've dove into the middle of something, but they don't really even know how it operates. So they jump in and be careful with these groups. Be careful to don't get tangled in that they're going to bring you to any freedom. They're just going to bring you into more trouble because the fact is that they're not even good people or honest in a fictitious world. So they could never bring you into a spiritual realm because they're not going in a direction that shows peace or love or good faith. They're acting already in bad faith, and they want to operate their own rules and create their own rules when they don't realize that if you're belonging to something that has a membership and a name to it, then you have to operate based on the rules that are within that, and they're not content to do that. And so this is where the due diligence comes in, and this is where I'm not going to mince words on anything I'm saying here. This is a matter of very straightforward. You have to do your due diligence, and you should be reading at least, if you want to know how a legal construct operates, then read the Corporations Act. So many religious organizations were upset under their charitable, tax exemption status, not being able to operate their buildings during these medical lockdowns, and their doors were closed and no one was able to gather or meet. And they wonder, well, how could that be? Well, because they're in a legal construct that deals with the Corporations Act. So, of course, I'm going to do a due diligence, so I go to the Corporations Act, but I also see how it attaches into charity law in the legal, okay, and in Canada, governed by the Attorney General's office, the Ministry of the Attorney General, and it says, basically, it's just talking about charities, and it's talking about religious organizations should consider certain issues carefully before incorporating. And it says governing law. If a religious organization becomes incorporated, that means it becomes a creature of the legal state. That's what they call it. It's a creature of the legal state. No matter what trade name that they're operating their religious view on, it's a trade name, but it becomes a creature of the state. So it births on the day that it incorporates. That's its birth date. And then it says, so again, it goes back, it says, if a religious organization becomes incorporated, its ecclesiastical, canon, or church laws, rules, or regulations may be subject to the Corporations Act. This means that if any ecclesiastical, canon, or church law, rule, or regulations conflicts with the Corporations Act, the organization, once incorporated, must comply with the Corporations Act and will no longer be able to use that law, rule, or regulation in administering its affairs. So they're being very straight that they control it. Bottom line is, no, you can't tell the government, the legal government, what to do under their legal title. So if you're operating within that system, it's going to rule you, not the other way around. And because monies are involved, these are not spiritual faiths, these are secular faiths, because they're involved in using secular funds to advance their purposes for their religious faith. So the government controls it because it basically issues the funds. So therefore, it's not going to allow you to tell them what to do with their funds. They're going to tell you what they're going to do with their funds and how you're going to basically operate your tax-exempt building. We have to go back to the early times of the Christians, and one of the main reasons why they were being thrown into the arenas was because they would not incorporate their newfound belief in Jesus Christ with the state of Caesar, because the two don't belong together. So they were thrown in the early days of persecution, they were thrown into those arenas because they would not do that. They would not compromise. If they had done that, if they had placed their belief in God and his son Jesus Christ as the king into the legal system of the Roman civil fiction, well, then they would be saying that Caesar was greater than Jesus Christ. so they would not do that. So there was a conflict occurring, and it took them almost 4 centuries before they found a way to legalize Christianity, which is now where the problem comes in, because Christianity is non-legal, not illegal, it's non-legal. It has nothing to do with legal. It's spiritual. It has nothing to do with a fiction. So we have to do a due diligence. We got to take the time. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again and putting these kind of videos out, because in order for you to digest and see and take off the blinding from your legal eyes to see in the spiritual world, you're going to need to do some due diligence, and you need to basically do the research that's required. So you're not going to walk out there blindly and speaking things that do not make sense. One of the most ridiculous statements of the Free Men on the Land movement is they're sovereigns. And I'm saying, well, how? Okay, we'll take it down a literal sense. You're a sovereign. Well, we know a sovereign is a gold coin, so they must believe they're a gold coin. Now, the other option is, if they're a sovereign, well, then they would have to have subjects as a sovereign, because in order to be a sovereign, a king, you would need subjects. So who are your subjects? It's a ridiculous, ridiculous statement that comes out of their mouth, and they teach people to say that. And I get it in almost all the seminars that I conduct. Someone always out of the audience will come out there and state that they're a sovereign. And how do I operate as a sovereign? I said, well, you're trying to operate as a god. So I bring you back to Genesis. And in the book of Genesis, what happened when man entered into sin with basically following the leader of fiction, Satan? The creator and his son said, look, they want to be gods just like us. So it appears they were entering into something that they were not. And so therefore, and there's people that send me emails and they'll quote scriptures about statements that are made in the book of Psalms regarding people being gods. And it's taken out of context, and they need to do some research on the background on those scriptures. And we'll probably touch that in a later video. But right now, I'm asking you to do a little bit of due diligence. I don't want you to lose yourself in these legal acts, but at least get a concept of understanding that when you enter into something that you were not a member of, and you become a member of it based on your own consent, then you're going to have to follow those rules, or the ones who run the club will club you.